Well, good morning.
Hello, good morning. How are you?
I'm uh I'm all right. This week has blown by and
Yeah,
I'm kind of missing you a little bit.
I know, I know. We had such a magical trip. That was just okay. So, welcome to Coffee Chat. Hi.
Hi.
Um, so we're a little bit later today, and that's because I needed to row this morning and had the chance to go out in my eight that is racing at Head of the Lake in a week.
Yep, out there in Seattle.
Yes, the big show here in Seattle is on Sunday the 6th. It's hosted by Lake Washington Rowing Club, who is also a sponsor of our podcast.
Yes. So fun, not funny, but we got through Head of the Charles and I'm a little bit tuned out. I have not been back to my club this week for a variety of reasons. The team's getting ready to go to Head of the Schuylkill in Philadelphia this weekend. But to me, I'm kind of feeling like the season has wrapped up. I've kind of put a little bow on it and I'm starting to think about the winter. But I think it's awesome. You've got another week. I'm assuming you're going to get out a couple more practices and then race next weekend. Head of the lake. And then is that the end of your racing season?
Yeah, that's the official end of the season here.
Yeah.
And it's a big one. It's a really big event. It's hosted by the Lake Washington Rowing Club. But what's really fun about it is you get to row through the cut, which is the famous cut from Boys in the Boat, and it's like a stadium. You row through the stadium, and at the end, almost kind of halfway, but you do like a solid single line 2K, up to a turn. And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of fun turns. There's a lot of like oar battling and things like that. And Vashon, my crew, is currently the defending champions of the mixed masters 8. We have an 83-second handicap, which is nice.
What?
Last year it was 124 seconds.
I didn't even know that was possible. I mean,
Yeah, I get, but apparently I'm the one dragging it down because I'm the baby of the boat.
yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, that's amazing. I had a question for you because I've only been out there with that one time, seen the cut one time. You and I were in a launch. There was a lot of boat traffic that day, and it was choppy and sloppy. It's not terribly wide, and so I'm assuming there's a lot of sloshing. Does that really come into play on race day? I mean, there aren't a lot of boats all at once through there.
Well, that's the idea. And so what they do is people launch from the University of Washington Boathouse. A lot of clubs launch from there. So there's one warm-up lane that goes one direction. And so it's one boat, single file through the cut all the way out to the start line. Of course, on Lake Union, there are multiple clubs that already are out there in Lake Union, and they can just line up at the start line and do their warm-up out there. But a lot of clubs have to travel through the cut. So you have one lane that's just a warm-up lane, and that goes the whole time. And then you're allowed, I think, up to three boats across in that cut. So it's a lot wider than you think. And
Yeah.
I actually coxed a race one time where we were going into the cut and we were passing a boat, but we were coming up on another boat. We ended up 3 boats across.
Yeah.
And it was like, like, don't look out, don't look
Yeah.
out of the boat. Really, really fun. It's kind of fun because there's a lot of twists and turns before then, and you get to pass a lot of people and pass a lot of cool things. But then once you get out, it's just this like straight 2K shot, like through the cut. So you're
Yeah.
doing basically the Windermere Cup, the opening day boat race, backwards. You're coming in at the finish line and going out to where the start buoys are. And
Okay.
then you hang this huge turn and then another huge turn, and you power into the finish, and you just basically like float back into the University of Washington Boathouse, which is really
Yeah.
fun. And there's a big pancake breakfast, and yeah, it's just a lot of good times. The weather here is looking pretty gnarly right now. There was a lot of rain this morning, very cold, but there has been one year, there's a famous photo on Route 2K where a float plane came through the cut because the LA allowed it to go through the cut. And they ended up canceling the race that morning. We all had launched and they ended up canceling the race. And there's actually quite a few boats that suffered hypothermia because they
Oh,
were California crews
yeah,
and they were young kids that went out first and they were dressed in nothing. They didn't bring
yeah.
anything with them. They didn't carry, it was bad. So we had a
Yeah.
lot of issues that year, but hopefully this year will be good and safe and sunny, just like the Charles. So we were at the Charles.
Rosie Charles. Hey, I want to say hi to Claudia Pace, who's with us this morning.
Claudia.
Claudia, I know Tara and I put together a list, like no joke, a list of people that we wanted to meet up with. We were trying to tick them off as we went in Boston. And, we had this plan on Saturday in Boston. We were going to start from Falls launch area and walk all the way to the basin and back. And walking wise, we never made it past Elliott. We were so
We
busy.
But I am glad that I asked somebody this morning who also was there, and I said, "Did you ever make it onto a bridge to cheer?" And she was
Yeah.
like, "No, I never
Nope.
made it." And I was like, I was really happy that we made it onto the Elliott Bridge to
Yeah.
cheer some of our favorite crews. So we did accomplish that, but we did have a list of people, and Claudia, you were on it, and Martha
Yeah.
Logan was on it,
Yeah, we
and
missed.
a bunch of people. But we had so much fun because we never got more than like
Yeah.
25 feet. We'd go 25 feet and we'd be like, let's interview that person. Let's get
Yeah.
that person,
Yeah.
and we made so many good connections. We did make an effort on Sunday to get down to the nonprofit
Yes.
section, which was GLRF, Craftsberry, One World. There was a little pocket Para Rowing Foundation, little
Mhm.
pocket folks down there. And we did get to go to CRI really briefly, which is always a treat. And we did get to see you, Michael Tutloff.
Yes,
Thank
oh
you
my God.
so much. That was so fun.
And Sophie
Um,
Brown is with us today.
yeah,
Hey,
Sophie,
Sophie.
but you know what I found out this morning that we
What?
totally missed?
What? Oh,
So
I
we spent a lot of time in the Wintech tent with the
yeah,
couches, and it was
yeah.
really swanky. Well, my friend who was also borrowing a boat, renting a boat from Wintech said, "Oh, wasn't that athlete area great?" And I was like, "What athlete area?" Behind that, right where the crew, where our film crew was,
Yeah.
there was a whole area with
Yeah.
snacks
Yeah.
and, like, a pad you could do stretches out on it, and that was for all the athletes using Wintech boats so that we
You
wouldn't
know,
be in their fucking tent.
I did not know. Okay, so I
I
totally
had no
saw that
idea.
tent. I saw that tent, I saw the snacks, and I just thought it was like,
I thought it was
Wintech.
for their crew. I thought it
Yeah,
was
I
for
thought it
their
was
people.
Wintech
No,
being VIPs, and I was like, I could really go for some of those snacks, but we should have just
no,
asked Brent about it.
no, we had no clue. So note to self for next year. But props to King Racing. That shell was gorgeous. We love
Yeah.
the shoe. Like you walk up like you're at a bowling alley to the guy in the Penske rental truck and was like, size 10, please. And he would hand you your shoes. And unfortunately, during the race, they got my shoe size wrong. I had said yes, that size, and got it back and got in the boat. And
Yeah.
that was very small for me.
Oh,
But
oh,
it was fine. It was fine.
you didn't have time to switch him out? Oh, I didn't know
No, I
that.
didn't know until I was sitting in the boat that it was the wrong shoe. I thought it was just whatever, so it's okay,
Oh,
but
that's a bummer.
props to King Racing. That was a beautiful boat.
We had a
Um,
brand new Comp 8, and,
a
it
brand new comp
seemed
oar as well.
Comp Concept 2 oars. That boat, I mean, to talk about it from a technical perspective, as a coxswain, that boat reacted really well. It turned very easily. The cockpit was actually spacious. I would say the cockpit is a little bit wider and deeper than like the Vespolia hulls that I'm used to sitting in.
Yeah.
I'm not terribly big. I'm 5'2", and I'm basically the same size I've been since I started rowing 20 plus years ago. But I have noticed the Vespolia hulls, like I have to really like wedge my hips in there. And I got in this king and it was like, okay, it was like a party up there. It was great.
You had a condo up there. It was pretty sweet.
That's a little bit much. I had a studio apartment. Yeah, I had a studio apartment in there.
But but also
Yeah, it
props
was
about
fun.
the oars were insane. We had never seen these kinds of oars before. They're called comp oars from Concept 2. They built them for us. They had little labels on them that said my name and Allies with Oars. And just shout out to the whole Concept 2 crew
Yeah,
and the Wintech King Racing crews. They were so helpful and responsive and informative. Like we just were like, we didn't even know where to put the collars on our oars. And we were like, and then who did we get to ask? Dick Dreisegacker.
Yeah. And while
then,
we were talking to Dick and starting to set up the colors and everything, then who rolled by, Tara? Then who rolled by from UW?
the whole men's eight rolled by,
Yeah.
and Mike Callahan, the commander, they call him the
Head
commander.
coach.
He rolls by, and I gotta say, my previous experience with Callahan had been a little brusque. I didn't, he's a busy man. He's a busy guy. He was sweet as can be, totally generous with his time. He's an incredible, long-standing, successful coach. And here we are, these like little measly masters, whatever's, he's like, my sister has a house on Vashon Island. And I was like, bring the boys over. Let's do a row with the boys. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. I'm like, yeah. Like our junior kids would be thrilled to see the University of Washington men, and women, of course, coming out with that. But man, what a trip. I mean, I couldn't have asked for better weather. We couldn't have had better conversations. If you track back in our Instagram feed, we have all these interviews, these just man on the street interviews with Alex James from NK, with Burnham Boat Slings, Peter Kermond, with the Dreisegackers, with Pete Dreisegacker gave us a lesson on the ski erg. Yeah. Like, he's so proud of it,
In the very first, I think it was the very first conversation we had Friday morning, we'd stopped by the Concept 2 tent. Judy Gear was sitting there. If you guys don't know, Judy Gear is a former national team member, Olympian, married to Dick Dreisegacker. And it was like 8:00 Friday morning, and she's already sitting on an erg outside the C2 tent and poking around and pushing buttons. And she gave us the inside scoop on a new Concept 2 feature that you can use through the app. It went live this weekend. She was testing it out because they were literally just finishing up like all their beta testing. But if you haven't heard about it on Concept 2, check out their erg data app. And there's this new thing called the loop, and it allows you to see other people who are on the loop and rowing, and see where they're from, and you can try and catch up with them and row with them. And it's kind of a neat little feature. And Judy was just sitting there testing it out and gave us a little rundown about it.
Yeah. And, the whole weekend, Rachel and I, we had a kind of a dual business that weekend. So one business was being in the biggest show in the world and as Steady State Podcast. And we are 3 seasons in, and it was kind of like a little like we were little debutantes, and we were like, and it was so nice because we weren't like, hey guys, like we have a podcast. Hey guys, like, hey, people were like, oh yeah, we listened to it on the way here. Oh, I love this one episode. Oh, I totally know you guys. And we were tricked out in really great gear. I unfortunately didn't get my sweatshirt in time, but I'm sporting it today. These are on the store. And then the second part of why we were there. So anyway, we got lots of validation, which was awesome. And the second part of why we were there, other than professional networking, was to row.
Yeah.
And it was like cherry on top of a great weekend. The rain started literally when we were sitting at the start line. Like the whole weekend was gorgeous. And then we're in the washing machine of the basin, and it was like, and here's the rain, like finally. Yeah. And we had, I think, a fantastic row for being together once, and just meeting. We had a great message. We were allies with oars. We were flying the flag of trans pride, queer pride, ally pride, allyship. The whole weekend, everybody had great gear, thanks to RowSource, to wear. And we were getting noticed, but we do have a little issue with...
or are we talking about Row 2K?
We're talking 2K. Yeah. If you track all the coverage, all the little highlights and bits from the weekend, somebody went through and said, this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. Not one mention of this initiative. And so we're going to be addressing that in a variety of fun and positive ways, because we know that there might be some transphobia or just some queerphobia, or they don't want to say the wrong thing, or we're not really sure what happened there. But not even to be concluded in a list. And then not to be able to have our boat announced as
Yeah.
we went by as
Yeah.
Allies with Oars. It was announced, it was on the piece of paper, but it was
Right.
announced as Columbus. And we know those announcers were busy. But this was really important. So what could we have done differently to put us a little further into the forefront of the press leading up to it? I almost like knocked on the door of some of those anchors that we saw from Boston
Mm.
News. Bonus though for the Boston News, they did do that really fun clip that's now I think on our social media that shows our boat being carried like
Yeah,
twice.
it's not there yet, but I will share it there, but it's definitely yes, through the Boston News Channel, did a recap of the Head of Charles, and somehow we made the cut twice, which is great. And, yeah, Tara, I think you're right. We did a lot of marketing and messaging directly from our social media and marketing out to folks that we know. But next year or the next time we row a boat like this with a message, we need to push a little bit harder to get directly into the ears and eyes of big folks like Row 2K, Rowing News. And I think that it's great that we are developing a plan to follow up, because we think that it's really worth the mention and the notice.
Yeah.
I am glad that, it did seem like a handful of camera crews that were there kind of noticed that we were there, and people started asking questions. I got to get the sun out of my eyes. Sorry.
Well, I did reach out. We did run into the Coxless Queer podcast host Lizzie
Yes.
Houston, who is also working for Wintech. So I actually just messaged her this morning on Instagram and just said, "Hey, just as we were arriving in Boston, at the same time, anti-trans propaganda was being circulated, including a petition to U.S. Rowing to limit women's events to biological women."
Yeah.
This comes out of a lot of conversation, obviously, in sport right now about trans women and trans men being in the not their just there's cis assignment, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And that was being circulated at the regatta. And I've since looked into that a little bit more. So that's worth absolutely chatting about.
Yeah,
Um,
I regret because I remember seeing something posted online like Thursday, and I was like, "Oh, this is ridiculous. This is trash." And I basically deleted it. And
yeah.
then I heard a few days ago from Meredith Breland of Concept 2. She said, "Hey, do you guys see this print material that was going around?" And she did the same thing. She was like, "This is junk." She tore it up and threw it away. And I kind of wish that I had really paid attention and looked at it from the perspective of our team Allies with Oars, because that would have been really great to feed right into the conversations that we were having with the vice crew that was following us and making a little documentary about our boat.
Yeah, so I just started a piece that I'm writing about allyship in rowing and about the experience of being in this boat. It's tricky stuff, tricky territory, and there's no right argument for it, to for or against or however you want to approach it. But I'm writing a more personal piece about, what it's like to be overlooked like that, but also to feel so buoyed and powerful as a boat together that was united by the message. And does it
Yeah.
matter if anybody noticed? We
Yeah.
knew, we put it on our social media, but
Yeah.
how important is it to be out and loud and proud? Like,
Yeah.
should we have put the rainbows on the oars? Should we have,
Yeah.
like what would have turned the tables to make it even just a mention of like, and
Mhm.
this year premiered Allies with Oars and Strokes in Transition, sponsored by, Concept 2 and da 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 da. Like,
Mm.
we were well funded. We were a fast boat.
Yeah.
We weren't just out there for shits and giggles. Like, we actually were dedicated to a good row and being part of the competition just like everybody else. So it wasn't
Yeah.
some sort of like, you know,
Charity boat.
charity
Yeah.
boat. Like, we actually were there to row, and people were very proud who were in the boat. And the people that we talked to along the way were also like, "Oh, wow, that's so cool. That's so cool." And speaking of Vice, that's a massive global media network, and they followed us all weekend and are making a documentary about our boat and about just the initiative that we had. And that's going to come out in January, we think, which is going to be huge.
Yeah.
So we'll
Yeah.
definitely.
It would have been great if that was turned around, a little bit faster. We would love it to follow closer on the heels of Ahead of the Charles. But truth be told, this is being made for a brand new Vice series called Queer Sports. Like it hasn't even launched yet, and they found us and said, "Hey, we want to do a story on you." So they're going to be editing it, working on it, and premiering it in January. So you know what? That gives us 2 more months to keep talking about it and marketing it and pushing our message, and I'm okay with that.
So, Michael, what is your question in regards to? Sorry, we got a little off track there. And
Oh, I
Willow,
think he's talking about this anti-trans messaging that we saw.
so you can look it up. It's an organization called ICON, ICON, and they've put out a petition to U.S. Road. So you can look it up on their website. You can see all of the materials there. So hi to Willow also, who
Hey,
was
Willow.
our bow seat in the 8 and also rode a single this time, and has the distinction of having competed in both the men's event and the women's event at the regatta, or having in any
At
regatta,
Masters Nationals. Yeah.
Masters. So yeah, feeling a little overlooked, feeling a little like, hey guys,
You,
we've been talking about this for a while. So
yeah. I do want to say that, yeah, I feel overlooked by larger news, like the larger rowing news market. But on the other hand, we got some really nice inroads with industry insiders.
yeah.
Burnham Boats, Concept 2, King, you name it. We just kind of schmoozed this weekend. And, Tara and I, what we've done with Steady State Network is the whole idea is it's about the average rower. It is. And those are the stories we tell, but it's really going to be helpful if we can get bigger name folks to help share the message and share our stories. So we did a little bit of that hobnobbing and rubbing elbows with folks. And those people that we interacted with this weekend were amazing and supportive. And I've already sent thank you messages and started hearing back from them. And that's where it matters. And this whole thing, this Steady State Network and the podcast has been this real grassroots, low key, bubbling, thing that is growing day by day. And like you said, Tara, we probably learned some lessons coming out of this so that the next time we know, like, put Row 2K, put Rowing News, and some other media folks on our contact list. And I think good things will happen from there.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
um,
So yeah, it's a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth, but I really respect the fact that everybody in our boat was so dedicated to the cause, because we did have allies in the boat as well as people who identify as queer and trans, and or gay, queer, and trans, and just props to everybody in that boat. James and John and Patrick,
Gordon, yeah,
Gordon, Casey, Larissa,
Larissa,
and Willow. Just
yeah.
an amazing crew, and Rachel as our driver. Just couldn't have asked for a better race experience, and it was really fun to see everyone out there. And then when we were in the basin, the director's mixed gender 8, which is what it's actually called in the
Mhm.
program, is one of the most fun things in the world. Like, there was Olympians there dressed as like Marvel characters.
A whole boat of Olympians. Yeah.
There was a bit of Olympians, and there was, Endeavor Racing Alliance was dressed, called Let It Rain, and they had crowns on. And then there was a CRI boat that was dressed as like a tea stop. That was really
Yeah.
cool. But it was that classic, you're all sort of floating around and you're like, hey, what's up? Hey, what's up? Hey, what's up?
Yeah.
Have a good race. Have a good race.
Yeah.
And just a lot of camaraderie, really a fun event, I
Yeah.
think.
It felt different to me too. I know I said this, like, while we were sitting in the basin, not it felt different to me this time, not just because, like, I wasn't in a boat with my crew, right? Like my regular boathouse crew, but that this was a pulled together 8 of folks from across the country with a mission. So, like, that felt really different, and I got little, like, goosebumps on my arms. But also, it was the last event of the regatta. So like nobody else was coming into the basin after us. Nobody was coming back up the course to race. And when we took off, we were like, we were of the last 30 boats to cross that start line for this year. And then what I didn't think about until we got back to the dock was, like the regatta was over. Like the regatta was over. People were leaving, like tents were closing up shop while we were still, coming up off the dock and de-rigging. So that felt really different than in years past.
Yeah, it definitely was. But I feel like we soaked up like every moment up
Yeah.
leading up to that. And we got such positive feedback about the podcast and about the boat that we were rowing and the message that we had. So it's a starting point. I think these kinds of things take time. And this is also a national, if not global, issue about trans in rowing. We did see when I went to renew my US rowing membership earlier in a couple months ago before racing season started, that you do have the option now to opt for non-binary
Mhm.
as your classification or your gender identification,
Yeah.
which is that's a big moment. And we know that US Rowing's DEI was very strong out. We met Jess Jackson and Jenny Treyas from US Rowing along the way this weekend at the, I think that was the Peloton tent.
Hydro. We were
And
at the hydro tent. Yeah.
yeah, Hydro,
Oh, no,
Hydro
yeah,
tent.
Peloton. Sorry. Yeah, it's the Peloton
It
tent.
was one of those
Yeah.
fancy
Yeah.
machines.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was so funny with the Peloton, but then Ash Pryor showed up, and I think the party started when Coach Ash Pryor showed up.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
so we okay, if you guys have seen RP3s, I'm sure you've seen RP3s. I remember a bunch of years ago being at Head of the Charles and there was an RP3 tent. It was literally a 10 by 10 tent with like two RP3s sitting in it. That was it. This year, RP3 had something called the Row Cave. It was like this like all immersive experience. There's like music and I don't know how many. They probably had like 15 ergs out. And it was this big party in there and they had an instructor and it was semi-enclosed and there was video showing on the screen. So you're supposed to be like feel like you're in this environment when you're rowing. But Tara and I walked by and it was like probably the best moment for like from a marketing perspective for them. Like the entire Leander women's squad was sitting on ergs and they were gorgeous and fit and doing drill work and you could see like all this amazing musculature in their backs. And then right next to them, the UW men were like stretching and we saw these dudes doing this pigeon. If you guys do yoga, they were doing the pigeon, but it was like pigeon on crack. It was like pigeon plus a back extension move. So Tara and
I didn't
I
see
have decided, yeah, well, we're calling them pigeon sit-ups, but it was like a pigeon into a back extension. And we've decided we're going to try and like our goal is to be able to do these like by Head of the Charles next year.
yeah, we're
Um,
gonna be doing reps of those every day.
yeah. Yeah. So listen, it is getting close to 12:30. We usually wrap up in about half an hour, but I did want to talk for a couple minutes about looking ahead to 2023. Um, you know, we talk a lot about, oh, it'd be so great to go here, it'd be so great to go there. There are all these regattas we want to go to. And sometimes it just seems like at the last minute we decide to do it or we don't plan quite enough. So we are starting to put together a schedule for 2023. There's some big events on that schedule and hopefully we'll be pulling together some steady state boats again to race. So if you want to race with us again, keep posted. We'll be putting calls out for that. And also just on a more personal level, you and I have both talked about kind of being on a fitness roller coaster, and it really depends on what else is going on in our lives and whether or not we're coaching or what's going on with our clubs. And so we kind of pinky swore while we were in Boston that next year was going to be like fittest year ever. So saying that out loud, getting it out there on tape, fittest year ever next year, so that A, we feel good, and B, we can race real fast. And I'm really
Yeah.
looking forward to seeing what happens.
Yeah, and I think that that might actually drive a little bit of our content. So if you have ideas about trainers or programs or something that's inspired you, our people are getting older and our masters rowers are feeling their age, and how do we stay in the boat longer? So one project that I wanted to bring back to the forefront next year, maybe in concert with this, is my rowing and aging project that I started a number of years ago, which was a global survey of rowers, and finding out what it's going to take for us to be able to row as long as possible and stay in the sport as long as possible. So look for that. Look for some, great training. Maybe we'll talk to Will Ruth from Craftsberry.
That'd be
Um,
fantastic.
I know Craftsberry's on the list for 2023.
It's totally on the list, and that we'll keep that like a little bit under wraps for now. But yes, we had a wonderful conversation with a couple of folks from Craftsberry.
Yeah.
Basically, Tara and I approached them and said, like, could we just pull up some Adirondack chairs and hang out for a few days? And there was a resounding yes in response. So we're just gonna have to figure that out, hopefully for next summer, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just thanks to everybody for all of your support of our initiative, and also just listening to the podcast and letting people know. We handed out hundreds of stickers, hundreds of cards, and the kids, of course, are great for stickers. They just, every kid on that regatta was like, yeah, they love their stickers. And Concept 2 was great because they let us put our stickers on their table, and Meredith said they went like hotcakes. Kids love their stickers. So it was good.
Tara, we almost forgot. All right, before we go, we got to talk about one more thing, because we have a new podcast episode hitting our patrons today, coming out to the public this weekend. And we talked to Brent Keuch, who is the director of marketing for King Racing. And he grew up rowing, started rowing when he was 13, fell in love with it. And just like a lot of us say, it totally changed his life. And, now not only is he a rower and married to a rower, but, he owns he's a co-owner of a boat manufacturing business. And he was so great, so wonderful to talk to, super outgoing, super chatty, had some good stories to tell and good perspectives on coaching both juniors and masters. And we can't wait for you to hear it.
I have to say, just before we go, one of my favorite questions, I can't remember who I asked it to, but I said, what does it mean to you to be such an institution in the sport of rowing? Like, I think it was NK.
You asked Alex James of NK.
Yeah, and we felt like there were so many people who fit that bill this weekend that we met, and they were just pillars in the rowing community, whether it was Peter Kermon from Burnham Boat Slings, whether it was the Rowers Choice guys, whether it was Wintech or Concept 2 or whoever it was. But there were some real pillars of our community, both rowing and vending and just circulating around. Like, we were like, whoa, is that? Whoa. That's and also, I think for me, seeing our podcast guests in action, we had never met anyone in person. Not never, but most people we had not met in person. And it was just a joyous reunion. We hope everybody stayed healthy during the event and after the event. We hope it wasn't a super spreader. I don't have it, so that's really good. And just shout out to all the people who just recognized the work that we've been doing for the past 3 years. It's going to be 3 years in April, so it's crazy.
It is crazy, and it's good, and good stuff is coming. And so, we've said this 1,000 times, but, there are some folks that join us. If you were here this morning, you were among them, folks that join us regularly, and we really appreciate it. And we love that we've been able to create this little network of people, and that now when we travel, we've got more folks to say hi to and talk to and trade stories with. And, all those warm and fuzzies.
It's just nice to feel like we're having some impact, you know?
I agree.
Thanks to everybody.
So speaking of impact, we have some emails to write, some emails to send, some people to reconnect with after Boston. And we will keep all of you guys abreast of what's happening here behind the scenes. And you know where to find us here, social media, and drop us a line if you ever want to chat. All right, Tara, I will see you right back here next Friday. Next Friday for a coffee chat. And everybody else, have a fantastic weekend. If you're racing, let us know how it goes. And we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Thanks, Rachel.
All right. See ya.